Vegas on the screen, feeling the flow, so pristine. Boom, as the beats align, electric dreams, they intertwine.
Would be Nancy's Riot podcast about positivity, being strong, get survival, mental health, helping each other and overcoming life's challenges. Say go like a lab, or go just to be a herd. Hey. Chasing me is everything to the Lord alone. Hey, I'll let go and chase. I don't win.
Good evening, everyone. Can I start? Okay, we're live. I've not been in the studio in a while. It's so good to be here. Thank you, as I always say, for your time, for joining me this evening. And tonight, I just wanted to say, I wanted to dedicate this episode to my son, Sebastian, because one of the things that my guest and I will be speaking on, it being not only Pride Month, but June being Mental Men's Health Awareness, my guest was so kind and generous to be able to come in and have a discussion with me about this, because I think it's really vulnerable. It's difficult for men to be vulnerable with their emotions. And so with that said, I just wanted to say today, Brett and I are meeting for the first time. We have communicated via text. And we've spoken, but never face to face. So you're going to capture a genuine conversation. It's unedited. Obviously, we're live. And he also is a Go Live personality. He also films his own podcast here at Go Live Vegas. We're a family here. So if you ever want to feel alive, Go Live Vegas. And he is the host of Student of the Game. And in his studio, my phone. In his phone, oh, I messed up there. Let's see. I told you guys it was on. It was on. Let me silence this real quick. On his show, he talks about sports, and I just wanted to say thank you, Brett, for wanting to be a part of my riot tonight, because I can't do this alone. It takes multiple people to be a riot, so. Thank you.
Absolutely.
And with that said, I also wanted to let you guys know, we want to take a poll tonight, because this fine gentleman sent me an unsolicited picture. It's not what you think, ladies. And if he allows it, by the end of tonight's episode, maybe we could show you what the picture was about. And maybe we could put a poll up, and anybody that wants to take a guess of what the picture was that he texted me, I'd be curious to see what you guys think. So, and anyhow, and I was saying, he's a student of the game, and well, sometimes maybe I'm a player, and I want to play.
You know, maybe in my own mind, absolutely. But no, Nancy, I really appreciate and thank you, Aaron. I really appreciate you having me on. Ever since you got going here, like you said, Go Live Vegas is a family. So any new host, any new show that we kind of have joining the rotation, joining the lineup, I'm eager to check it out myself. The first is a man I admire very much, and I'm a man I respect very much. And I thought, wow, this Nancy's Riot thing is pretty cool. Maybe I should, check it out a little bit more. Next thing you know, here I am, and it's awesome. And just to have me on in general would be a huge honor, but knowing that what we're talking about specifically here tonight, that makes it really special.
No, and I want to thank you so much for being open to have a vulnerable, honest conversation, so others can see what humanity and just having a human-to-human interaction with a conversation of two complete strangers still at the end of the day, because although we know some things about one another, we're still getting to know one another.
Yeah.
And with that said, I have a few questions for you, just for us to get to know each other a little bit more live for the audience. So I have a couple questions. Why the podcast? And how long have you had it?
The podcast itself, in terms of student of the game, about 2.5, honestly, probably closer to 3 years at this point. I've been involved with Go Live Vegas in various capacities as a host since about Aaron, 2021, early 2021. So it's been a while for Go Live Vegas. In terms of the podcasting itself, this is essentially this is my chosen career path, really. I've been pursuing broadcasting and podcasting since, and really just all aspects of the sports media since I was really late, my final couple years in high school. Some people have a general idea. Some people have no clue going to college what they want to do. I went into college not only knowing the field I wanted to enter, but exactly what I wanted to do in particular. I wanted to be a sports talk show host. I've always admired sports broadcasting. I'm a diehard sports fan. I was an athlete growing up. I knew my career would eventually, end. Basically, I knew it was going to be limited when it was also, no matter how far I went, it was only going to go so far. So I figured, what's the next best thing other than playing sports? It's talking about sports. Love sports, love to talk, love to perform. It was a match made in heaven. I went into college knowing what I wanted to do, kind of got involved with the campus radio station, got my own weekly talk show covering all sports, began doing the play-by-play commentary for all the teams in the winter and the spring seasons. I was playing football at the time, so I couldn't do the fall sports, but winter through spring, I was occupied. So, and honestly, ever since graduation, whether it be, national radio, local radio, TV, podcasting, digital stuff with Aaron, I've just always tried to maintain whether it be behind the scenes, behind the microphone, in front of the camera, I've always just tried to maintain a presence in the space. So to answer your question, it's really just kind of my dream.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, you certainly have a powerful voice.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
It may annoy some, but others, that's usually the first thing. As Aaron nods his head in agreement. But it's one of those things that a lot of, people pick up instantly. And even if they don't guess it's a sportscaster, they guess that it's something that relates to communication or talking. And, if there's one talent, maybe running my mouth is it, and I'll take it. Okay.
So long term, where do you see yourself in, let's say, by 40? Because I know you.
I think
Now, is there a certain sport in particular that you'd like to cover?
In terms of the general stuff, because I host a weekly talk show here as Student of the Game. So there I cover everything. The time usually actually will vary depending on what time we're doing Midlife Mischief. Because of that, the show I do after with Raquel.
Okay.
So it often works best in accordance with our schedules. We do both back to back, even if we want to air them at different times throughout the programming slate throughout the week for Go Live Vegas. So that's what's cool about that. I got to do a lot of other exclusive remotes and conventions and different things with Aaron and Raquel as well. So the show will actually shift, but usually it's always going to be around 1, 2 o'clock in the afternoon. We stream live on Go Live Vegas, the Go Live Vegas app, YouTube and Facebook. Most of the traction though comes in the form of the podcast itself, right? Because Go Live Vegas is still really trying to establish that footprint as far as our live audience, but the podcast numbers are starting to grow. So where I see myself, honestly, I think just continuing to climb this trajectory. Every time I do a show, it gives me an opportunity to become a better host. And anytime I watch a sport, read about a sport, find a new bit of info, a new bit of factoid, I become sharper in terms of the sports I'm covering. I could use my own insights as an athlete, my insights in accordance with other media personalities, coaches, athletes, and the like. So I definitely see myself in 10 years, or I guess you could say by 40, doing exactly what I'm doing. But at the same time, I almost can't truly gauge it. Because 2 years ago, I wouldn't have imagined myself doing this. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I know it's going to be this. I know it's going to be television and radio and podcasting of the like, or something of the like. But at the same time, since my options are so open right now, and since Go Live Vegas can do so much, I envision it still being about sports. I envision it about being a lot of Vegas culture. But I'm willing to go wherever, people are willing to hear me talk. And as of right now, it's Go Live Vegas, and I'd like to stay in Vegas. But any opportunity that I have to broadcast, I'm going to go. And that's why Go Live Vegas, Aaron and Raquel have been so incredible, because they gave me an opportunity when I was wrapped up with the network I was at before, doing some stuff with, Sirius XM, national TV, and it was awesome. But the pandemic hit. Every industry essentially got torpedoed, broadcasting especially. And Aaron and Raquel had a place where I could further establish myself as an on-air talent. And just, again, each episode I host makes me a better host. And it's not so much about the sports knowledge as much as the ability to perform and execute a show properly to the best of my ability.
Now I have a question for you, because how did you meet Raquel and Aaron? Because
that's actually, he laughs.
Because my podcast almost didn't happen. I don't know if you've heard me talk about it. But everybody who I thought would be with me on this journey never got back to me.
Right.
So it was different people that stepped in, and made it happen, the picture, the logo. And Aaron, I found him on TikTok from Hawk.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, because I remembered Hawk putting a video up about he'd been banned, and Go Live Vegas brought his TikTok account back, and because I couldn't remember his name, and then I called him right, it was right around Christmas, and then he called me right after Christmas, and I was like, hey, my YouTube channel's up, but literally everybody's like not called me back or bailed on me.
Right.
And I'm like, and you know, not, and I had told myself, I'll be damned if I am not launching this podcast on Insurrection Day. I don't know if you know that I launched on Insurrection Day.
On the 6th.
Right,
Yeah.
on the 6th, because I never wanted anybody to forget when Nancy's Riot launched, because
There you go.
Insurrection Day is engraved in everybody's mind, and a riot isn't just one person, you know.
It's the collective.
It's the collective, right? And so hence why the name. And yeah, I know sometimes when people might see it, they'll be like, oh, riot. But then you see me and you actually hear me speak and something completely different. And that's why I've wanted to bring a really a variety of guests, you know, so that, because I think we're also multi-dimensional, but we don't take the time to be curious anymore.
Amen to that.
Because we're so glued to our phones, you know. And before we get into the topic that we're going to discuss tonight,
Love it.
I want to know what inspires Brett.
No, it's you guys Aaron asked. Honestly, it's the passion that I have for what I do. The passion I had for football, the love I had for the game, that carries over. Because like I said, I knew after college, eventually that was going to end. But I knew my passion for the game of football and passion for all sports was going to continue to push me through in the media and the broadcasting. So ultimately, it's just me truly, and I know it sounds cliche, it is me truly trying to max out my potential the best I can. I am my own worst critic. I am going to come back and watch this episode and think, why in the hell did you not adjust the air conditioning? Because as you can see, I'm getting a little balmy. I've been doing this for like 11, 12 years. I normally don't get like this. Nancy's even watched the show. Normally I'm fine. But then normally, and thank you, I appreciate it. And that's on me. That's on me, because I went in instead to go, you know, talk shop with Raquel and
Do you
get my
need me to
coffee.
pour some water on you?
Maybe, but again, if we're gonna get
I don't
wet
have
and
sugar.
if we're gonna get wet and slippery, wait until a little bit in until we reveal the unsolicited pick. But no, honestly, it's ultimately just the passion and my love for broadcasting that is what inspires me to do it. And it's because I truly do feel, I mean, I don't know how much in this life if we ever truly have a purpose, but it sure sometimes feels like we do. I guess you never really know until you find it.
Right.
And I mean, look, I don't know whether it be, you know, the powers that be or whatever, but whoever's in charge of kind of aligning it, to me, they sure did a good job, because it seems like the most natural fit in the world. And sports is just the focal point for me, because it's what I enjoy the most. It's not I don't put parameters on myself. You know, I don't confine myself to a box. So it's not the be all end all. In fact, there's been cases where throughout a week, the main show I do will, yes, be Student of the Game, but as Aaron has, you know, explained, or as I've explained with Aaron, the conventions, the remotes, podcasts like there's Aaron right there.
Yeah,
Podcasts,
live.
right? Podcasts like this. Any chance I get to talk, I am going to take it. At least if someone wants me to join the show, if someone wants me to host a show that they're producing, something of the like, because I feel, again, not only is it an opportunity for me to get that much better, I like performing. And if I can enhance someone's experience, whether it be the viewing or the listening experience, or someone like you in a direct interaction capacity, that is perfect, my man. Thank you.
Have you ever coached a team?
I have in a more limited capacity. Several friends of mine have coached, and they've kind of pushed me into it, even though they respect my media endeavors as well. But that's because more so the passion of the game of football. Initially, I kind of thought coaching would be the calling. But then consuming sports media daily, coming home after practice or weightlifting and watching all the talk shows on TV and all the major networks, or driving to school in the morning and listening to sports talk radio. And I thought, these guys get paid for that? That's a job, right? And I'm all like, that's me. Because again, I've always admired sports, and I've always admired like sports broadcasting. But at some point, eventually something clicked for me. I'm all like, I can do that. Like, I'm not just fans of these guys. I think that one day I could be contemporary of these people, and getting to work in the media locally and nationally, and really kind of hit the ground running. And it's such a volatile industry anyway, because you can hit the ground running fast and the next thing you know, you fall off for a few years, and then you hit it big for a few years. The continuity and the sequencing is kind of all over the place. And because of that, like when I answered your former question, it's very hard to gauge where you're going to be. The one thing you can do is know that in terms of what you have scheduled in front of you or what you have on your slate, in this case, Go Live Vegas, or even in this specific case, Nancy's Riot, the focus and the inspiration is to bring it, right? And when the camera goes on, when the microphone goes on, bring it the best you possibly can, because at the very least, even if they say, you know what, that show sucked, Brett, they can't say you half-assed it.
Right.
So I take the same mentality I did playing sports and really approaching anything, even just a typical 9-to-5 job when I was, trying to get established in the media and coming home for summer and winter vacations, doing the paid internships at the local stations, the unpaid internships, and having to just work random jobs here and there. I still put everything I can into it because at the same time, I just can't. I'm the kind of guy who, if I'm not locked in, I would gladly take my foot off the gas. Once I know there's a task ahead of me, it's time to buckle down and get after it. And even though these shows, I try to keep it light, I try to keep it fun and very energetic, there's an element of maybe not competition, but I guess you could say priority that I really want to address with each and every show, whether it be something topical, whether it be something personal, something in the actual industry itself, something that may pertain to Go Live Vegas and the network as it's growing. So my inspiration as a specific thing kind of changes in terms of what show I'm doing, in terms of how I'm going to approach it. But the constant, right, the one point of consistency is just how important it is to me.
Right.
That is really what inspires me, because this is something I love, and it's something that I truly feel I was put on the earth to do.
Well, I have a quote. You can't lie to yourself. Your mind knows the truth to your thoughts.
Amen.
And I think that at the end of the day, when we lay our heads on that pillow, we know if we gave it our all that day or
Yes.
not, and we could tell anybody outside of us, no, I gave 100%, but because you can't lie to yourself.
Bingo.
And that brings me to the subject that we were going to discuss today. First of all, again, thank you so much for willing to discuss men's mental health awareness for the month of June, because I think that our society has made it very difficult for men to have the vulnerable conversations and to suppress emotions, because you get told to man up. And as women, we get told different things, but I want to know, as an athlete and somebody who has coached, who has been in the athletic industry for a while, and you're still fairly young.
Right.
You're no spring chicken, but
where's the cutoff for spring chicken? Is early 30s?
Yeah, I don't know. And you know what, Aaron, before we get started talking on the subject, is the poll up about if people want to guess what the unsolicited pick was? No? Okay.
Well, you can get to it now. We could
so
throw it
if
up
we
a couple more times.
if they want to take a guess what he sent me a picture of.
What is the unsolicited pick that Nancy received?
Right, that I received from Brett. That's the poll. And 2, can we open up the lines just in case there's a gentleman or a woman, whomever wants to call in and ask Brett or myself a question? Please feel free to do so. So the phone lines, if you are in the USA, 702-329-6947, international, 1-855-502-4321, and in Canada, 587-997-3200. And so let's, to my question. In being an athlete, a coach, and in athletics, what have you personally witnessed or encountered when it comes to men's mental health challenges or your personal experience?
The biggest challenges, and I was a football player for quite a long time, and at least, compared to what most average football careers, not saying I'm like exceptionally talented, I just was happened to be lucky and stick with it and was able to play in college. And the one thing I really experienced is just that the mindset, kind of what I mentioned earlier, of pushing through and locking in can be your best ally, but it could also be your biggest detriment. And because of that, you have to not necessarily know how to take your foot off the gas. You have to know how to expand your vision. And you have to kind of get the peripheral to encompass full picture. And I think you learn this only through adversity and hardship. It's so easy to learn it when things are going well, when your team is winning, when you're performing well. If you're a coach, the guys are, your players are starting to pick up with what you're trying to instill in them. But at the same time, it's only through the struggle, it's only through the failure that you lose. And that's why, to me, the most, like, it's kind of like broadcasting. The more reps you get, the more licks you take, the more bumps you take, and you learn how to deal with that. So a lot of it, I think, is when that athlete, when in this case, that male athlete, when in his journey, he finds that adversity. And when he does, I think the most important thing is just being your own biggest fan. You have to tell yourself the thing, or emphasize to yourself the things that you do well, so you don't get caught up on the bad. And there's a classic like adage in football, you know, the eye in the sky don't lie, because, you know, they're always watching, no matter what, practicing game on game film. But then coaches always say, at least a good coach is going to reiterate, it's never as good as you think, and it's never as bad as you think. And it's the same way when I come back and I go back and review my podcasts on shows I think are bad. I'm like, that was actually pretty good. And then on shows I walk away thinking, oh, I'm gonna, you know, give me the Marconi or the Emmy award for it. I'm like, ooh, that wasn't very good. You know, not saying the whole show even sucked, but I'm all like, not as good as I thought it would. So you kind of have to know how to take it in stride and realize you are always getting better. The professional athletes you see in their respective sports, they have that mentality. They're always getting better. And it's an element of obsession, but you can't let it become an unhealthy obsession. Because, and I'm not going to sit here and preach about balance, because I think balance kind of all sits in the eye of the beholder. You know best how to balance your life. Other people can't really tell you how to do it. I mean, unless you have someone on your, like, your shoulder following you around. But ultimately, the most important thing to me is that you have to sit back and kind of go through with a fine-tooth comb. Okay, here's what I'm doing that's working. Here's what I'm doing that's not, right? Strictly as an athlete and as a performer. So how do I try to emphasize this and minimalize this, while also knowing it's not going to be an overnight fix? And there are going to be some things you did well 2 days ago that you struggle with, because those are just the ebbs and flows of athletic performance. And then there'll be things that, you know, 2 days ago you did that you were great at, and now you're struggling, and then vice versa. So it's one of those things where you truly have to take it day by day. And so often athletes, understandably so, think big picture. And I think because of that, and in a results-based industry like sports, they get so caught up in the outcome. So caught up in the outcome. Nick Saban, arguably the greatest college football coach of all time, what, 7 national championships? He says that the moment you start emphasizing the outcome over the process, the results over the work, you failed. Because when the proper measures and steps are taken, the result is going to be there. And if it isn't, then you just say, okay, they did things too, because that athlete, that team, that coach is also thinking this and feeling this. And that's when you have to realize that sports, no matter how much we would like to analyze it, even on my show, as much as I like to, you know, make it this nitty gritty thing, it's also a game of people, whether it be an individual sport or a team sport. And you kind of have to, so often as a sports culture, we gloss that over. We treat athletes like robots, especially at the high end level.
Right.
And because of that, I think we forget that these people are doing this for a living, just like I'm pursuing my career ambition.
It's their art.
And you,
Yeah.
it's their art, it's their craft, it's what they do. And they have to manage that with families, with wives, with kids, and, you know, all athletes, with husbands, with kids, right? In this case, it's the lens of the men. That's all athletes. And personal lives, trauma from the past, your upbringing, things that may actually inspire you to be a better athlete, but may hold you back as a person. That's happened to me. Sometimes I thought sometimes I think maybe I loved broadcasting and football back when I played a little bit too much. It hindered me in other avenues of life. So figure out what is optimal for you, because what's optimal for someone else is not going to be optimal for you necessarily.
Do you remember your first loss, and what was it?
In terms of
I guess game when you were a kid, like, because, you know, I think that
so
a lot of mental issues
Right.
start at a very young age.
right.
You know, so I think today, something that I've noticed, because my son is a coach.
Yeah.
And I have friends who have small kids, and one thing that I think that has, not I think, I know that has changed. Now, every kid on a team usually gets an award.
Yes.
Not every kid deserves an award.
Mhm.
And I grew up in an era, and so did my kids, where not everybody received an award. You had to earn an award.
Hmm.
And I think kids need to earn awards. And I think sometimes parents, and this might hit wrong to some people, but I'm gonna say it anyhow.
Hmm.
Some parents are delusional and they think their kids are good at everything, and they're not. And I know that I was a parent that if I knew my kid that was I know their shortcomings, and I wouldn't set them up for failure, knowing that, trying to convince myself that my kid was capable of being just as good as somebody else's kid,
Yeah.
because there's different talents, just like there's different shapes, colors, you know. So
It's not one size fits all.
no, but nowadays every kid gets an award.
Hmm.
So it's like a lot of them don't learn those social skills that, okay, just because you got an award doesn't mean you deserved or you earned it.
Hmm.
It just happens that just everybody got one. So you're no different than anybody else. But there's always somebody that's more talented than
Right.
the other person, no matter what you do in a career.
Hmm.
You know, so I guess, do you recall what your first loss was, and how you handled it, or how it affected you?
I mean, you could go on and on because I played numerous other sports before I found football. In fact, I think a big reason why football worked out for me is because I joined it relatively late. I think a big problem with that sport in particular is that kids often join it too early because of the parents that you just mentioned. That type of mindset often goes into it. But I've had losses in individual sports. I mean, I remember my first loss in wrestling was really tough because it was my first year. I was wrestling a kid. This was like its fifth, sixth grade in like a middle school program out here. And this kid was a whiz. This kid has been on the mat for like years. And he kicked my ass. And I realized, but at the same time, I
Oh,
realized,
that explains
right, but at the same time,
our conversation.
but at the same time, though, I realized I just started at this. He's been at it for a while. You know, a few years later, now I'm kicking ass on the mat. And it's one of those things where it's all like, now I'm the top dog, the big
Right.
fish in the little pond. So it's one of those things where that first loss actually is incredibly important because you learn more from the losses than you do the wins.
Yeah.
You don't lose. You honestly, you don't learn much. You learn in terms of how you can perform and how you could push through wins, but you don't necessarily learn what you could bounce back from until you lose. And once you lose, you really understand what you can overcome. And team sports are a little bit different. So like my first year of football, I was really kind of just figuring out the game, how it all went down. So my first loss there, I was kind of thinking, okay, so this is what losing feels like. But, you know, it may have been at a point where I wasn't playing as much because it was my first year. You fast forward a few years later, you know, when I'm like, you know, 7th, 8th grade. And then it's all like, okay, now I'm out there on the field busting my tail the whole game, playing well. My parents are out there watching me, even my friends, maybe family, cousins, whatever, and we lose. That sucks because that's going to be like, that's when the car ride home is a little bit longer, right? That's when you're kind of moping around at school the next day. So I can't necessarily remember the first pinpoint loss I had, but I can remember very well specific ones that taught me about myself and taught me about the teammates around me and my coaches. I remember there was a loss I had as like a sophomore playing football that the team that we should have, you know, dog walked, and they beat us. And I remember riding home on the bus and we're all like, yeah, because they wanted it way more than we did. We went into that game thinking we would handle it. They went into that game knowing they had nothing to lose. And we were like 10th graders at this point, let alone, you know, college or even varsity or like senior year. And I was all like, they came and they took that game from us, even though we on paper are a better team. Vice versa. I know the exact same feeling when you are the inferior team and you snatch it from the guys who are supposed to beat your ass, right? So ultimately, the losses that I remember are the losses that I immediately kind of went back to the drawing board and thought, okay, you played this well and it didn't really change the outcome. So even if you did do your part, something went wrong at some point that either you or your teammates can fix. And this is what you need to focus on, because obviously that is an issue. And it's not so much an individual like outcome, but you remember the individual plays, the individual series. I could have done a little more of that down, or on this play. On this play, I could have hustled a little bit more possibly. And I was a player who truly emptied the tank, I feel, on every play. But even so, you watch it, you're all like, maybe if I would have gotten off the ball a little bit faster. Maybe if I would have, you know, done this move on the offensive line, because I was a defensive lineman. Maybe I'd do this move on the offensive lineman and time it better. I get the sack there. Next thing you know, they're punting it, and we don't lose the game. You know, on the game losing drive, right? So it's not so much individual losses that you think like, or like early in your career that you think that changed me forever. It's how the losses are significant. Because there could be losses that I remember randomly as a 10th grader, losses I remember as a senior in college. Like, I mean, the last football game I ever played, but I remember that I ever played at a home as a home football game. That was a brutal loss. And I remember damn near wanting to go into my dorm room after and cry. And that was way late in the end of my career. So it's more so the losses that stand out in a certain way. Kind of like you, like as a little kid, you don't remember necessarily the first time you scraped your knee or bumped your elbow, but throughout your life, you remember the most painful times you scraped your knee or bumped your elbow, right? So it's more so about the significance of where in your journey they come back to bite you where it hurts, because that's where you have to learn.
You know, well, I've always been very competitive, and my first job was as a newspaper girl. And I remember on Sundays, and this was back in the day where you had to collect the money.
Yeah.
And I remember there was some customers that asked me, they said, if you make sure that my newspaper is on Sunday in the driveway at a certain amount of time, I'll tip you more. And there was a bike I wanted. I think it was a BMX bike. It was like a few $100s. And it took me like a month to get it because I got enough tips at 10 years old. I think it was like $300. And back in the late 80s, that was a lot of money.
Right.
And I didn't realize it then until now, but that's where I realized the art, I guess, of just doing your job.
Yeah.
And being consistent, you know, and how it pays off. So, and I'm curious, as a man, has anybody throughout your journey belittled you or made you feel less than what maybe it is that you're doing, or question yourself?
Most of the time, it's the people in your direct ancillary. And it's people who aren't even doing it intentionally a lot of the time. It's people who may be sharing. And when I say this, I don't necessarily mean people my age, usually people older, family members, maybe even coaches. They say, and sometimes it's even intentional with the coaches, because it's not necessarily to hurt you in any way or drag you down in any way. It's to light a fire under you. And they know the exact right way to do it. Sometimes the best thing to do is piss a player off. But then there are those conversations you're having with a dad, with an uncle, with an older brother, an older cousin. And then they made not even a snide comment, maybe just a genuine comment that hits deep. And you don't necessarily feel belittled as a man, but you, in terms of what they did, you feel like you failed as a man, because if they are talking to me about these things right now, I didn't eliminate the doubt. I didn't confirm the result with them. Right? So I think everyone at one point has been belittled, but I also I'm the type who can dish it and take it, but if you dish it at me, I'll fire it right back at you. So when I feel belittled, I don't necessarily feel like, oh, you know, they're suppressing me or bullying me. I'm like, no, this is an opportunity for me to fire right back at them. Because that's one thing I've tried to work on, and maybe not be as emotional or confrontational, but it's more so those intimate conversations or those calm conversations that aren't meant to be confrontational, that are meant to just be maybe a bit of honest truth. Or, you know, what some people call, you know, the come to Jesus meeting. I know it's kind of thrown around a lot, but sometimes you have those and you walk back to your room, or you walk back to, you know, your wherever you walking through the halls at school after, you know, maybe your dad dropping you off in the morning, and you think, damn, that's really going to stick with me. So those make you feel belittled, even if no one is actually belittling you. Often when people belittle me directly, I'll just straight up say, all right, we're right there. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So that's more so, to me, I'm not bummed about that when that happens. Because to me, I'm not saying it's an opportunity to engage in, you know, verbal combat. It's more so like, all right, well, if you're going to come at me with something that better be accurate, or it better be at least really good. But I'm not going to feel belittled. Someone whose opinion is near and dear to me, and they tell me, look, you need to do better, that will definitely hit me to my core in a much stronger way. So, and I don't mean to like kind of take the answer on a tangent, but it's because to me, I don't necessarily feel belittled in that regard in terms of like the negative talk. It's more so like the sit down, put your arm around you, let me give you some wisdom that is useful in the long run, but in the immediate sense, you think, maybe I'm not as far along as I thought I was.
So let me ask you this then. From your opinion or your perspective, why do you think men's mental health is not openly discussed from a man's perspective? Because I know throughout my conversations with men, and it hasn't been until probably the last 6 to 8 months that I've had more men open up to me about abuse that and these are complete strangers that experience in marriages or relationships. And I've had several men cry to me and open up to me about their experience, and I've never in my life encountered this until lately. And I obviously it's easier to be vulnerable to a complete stranger because who are we going to tell?
No strings attached.
No strings attached.
Yeah.
So I think part of that vulnerability makes it easier when you think you're never going to see or speak to that person
No
again.
doubt about it.
So from your perspective, why do you think, because there's over 500,000 men that do succeed in committing,
Yeah.
taking their lives. And so obviously our military, we know the PTSD and whatnot, but just men in general, what from your perspective do you think affects men from discussing openly your feelings?
I think men don't know how to rely on other men. And I do think while there is a place for women to help men through that process, I often think throwing it all their way can be problematic just because, for one, you are a man. A man is going to understand exactly what you are going through. No different than you can't open up to me about things that a woman goes through. But if you were to open up to, let's say, Raquel, right, just in the other room right now, she's going to understand things that I can't. So it's not to say you shouldn't open up to the opposite sex. You absolutely should. But you should not close off talking about those things with members of your own sex in that regard. And I'm not saying this in terms of like, the binary aspect or even whatever you identify as, you have to be able to talk to people who also identify as that, whatever it may be. Because if you don't, you are getting away further from the path of people who don't know your journey. Right? And I'm not to say like, yeah, a women's sports broadcaster who goes through the same type of thing, or a women athlete is going to know a lot of the things I went through, but she's going to know it through the lens of a woman. Right. And in her world, let's say the women's sports media personality, it's actually going to be a lot harder because it's a male dominated industry. Right. But at the same time, right, me as the guy who was the former football player, right, the guy who likes MMA and boxing and all that, and the guy who likes to talk about people getting punched in the face and all that, if I were to wax poetic about that, the optics of it, the way it comes off, it's not necessarily that it's weak. It could be a little jarring to some, though. And I think that we are moving in the right direction because of hosts and podcasts like yourself and like this one willing to have those conversations. And I also think that enough men are at the point now where they really want to open up to somebody. They just can't rip the Band-Aid when doing it to their buddies or when doing it with their buddies. And I think that's the biggest thing. And some may have the point of analysis that it all goes back to childhood, not enough male role models, father type figures.
Right.
And that has a lot to do with it as well. But I think so often just being able to confide in people, whether it be like your quote unquote bro, a cousin, a brother, a coworker who you're really close with and had similar experiences with, because you don't have to open up to everybody the same. You don't have to tell everybody the same story. You told me a story before we came on air about a stranger, and obviously I'm not going to air out too much information, but that stranger got very emotional with you on the phone, right?
Right.
But he may not do that with everybody else. Just like you may have conversation with someone who you know have a way more closer relationship with this person than the guy you just talked to on the phone, but it may not be that intimate. Right? So like it doesn't have to be doom and gloom. You can tell someone how you're feeling and keep it light. And keep it funny and keep it honestly with a more positive outlook, because you are just trying to have a line of communication and then you tell them how you're feeling. That is the biggest. And to me, that ties back into depression, mental health, anxiety. I mean, a lot of times it's all cumulative. And I know each diagnosis is specific to the person. But I think one of the biggest issues with even something like depression is everyone always thinks it's doom and gloom. Everyone always thinks it's like the dark rain cloud above you and you're in bed with your covers, listening to sad music, watching sad movies. No, a lot of people are depressed. They go to work. They could put a smile on their face. They could host a talk show. They could go coach or play in a game. But it's when they're away from that, how are they feeling? So that is, I think, is the bigger focus in terms of being able to not just talk to men, but casually talk to men about it, right? It doesn't have to feel like a therapy session. It could be very therapeutic, but it doesn't have to feel like a doctor's appointment. And I think so often men with other men feel it's that. They're happy to open up to their wives, their spouses, the girlfriend they've been dating for 2 weeks, let alone their mother, their aunt, their grandmother. And that they should do that. But those people aren't the only ones you should open up to, because notice how women don't do that. Women will open up to men, but notice the support system women often have for each other. Men don't. Right. I'm not saying every woman supports, though. We know that to be true. Yeah. But ultimately, you guys have like this apparatus of support. Men, it's disjointed. And it's not because it's not there. Because I know so many of my friends who've reached out. Let me know if you need to talk. Let me know if there's something up. I'm thinking of you. I want to hear from you. But they're not mind readers, right? They have their own lives. So you kind of have to meet them in the middle. You know, it's one of those things. I always say, like, if you're dangling from a cliff, the person looking to save you does have to reach out. But you can't just kind of stay there and have them like drag you up. You know what I mean? You have to do a little bit reaching yourself. And I think that is where it gets often, basically it gets lost in the shuffle, because men don't realize that they can, and it's not that hard, but it's scary and they don't want to do it a lot.
So you have a support group.
Yes, very much so.
Is that one thing that you recommend that men should have?
I will say maybe I am a little bit lucky, and a lot of that is because of my relationships through football. I will never sit here and say any man, like a man should play football or play a competitive sport to create these relationships, but I do think he should immerse himself in a team setting. I think if you look at today's generation, I know like I'm a millennial, so me saying today's generation kind of is, cringeworthy, but at the same time, the lack of social activity, the lack of, it sounds cliche again, but these third spaces that so many young men don't have. It's go to school, go home, go to work, go home. Even if you have a decent, stable romantic life, there's nothing else. I see guys who I follow on like Instagram, I'll click on their story and it looks like they're living lavishly, living large, but they're unhappy. It's a desperate cry for help because you could tell they don't have a consistent basis of male friendship in their lives, even if they're great fathers, great husbands, and great at what they do for their livelihood. But because of that, they focus on that and think that's enough. And on the day by day, it actually may be on the surface. But when you're hanging by a thread and you don't know why, that's when you have to realize, okay, who else can I talk to? Because sometimes the person necessarily closest with you may not be the best person to talk to. Sometimes it's someone with a little bit more distance. Other times it is someone with direct proximity because they were in that situation with you. But I am very lucky because of my experience with sports, because of my experience with the media, because of my experience just overall being who I am as a more socially extroverted person. I have that support system that honestly plenty others have. I just like to tap into it because I could reap the benefits of it, right? I'm not mean to sound selfish, but that's the truth. So many men, my age, younger, even older, haven't made that attempt, so they can't reap the benefits of it.
What's something that you would change in society as a man to change the way society is in discussing men's feelings and their mental health? So
I think that men, it's a lot of it's the social media discourse right now because that's what's out there in the forefront. So when men and women often have it, like personal conversations like we're having now, even off the air,
right?
It's usually more productive. When you get on social media, it all turns into a bunch of hogwash and it gets bad. I actually think one of two things: either we collectively change the way we all discuss these things on social media. Let's be real, that's not going to happen.
Right.
So two, stay off of social media, at least as it pertains to these things. Because I think the issue you have now is that so many women who have been hurt by, whether you want to call it the patriarchy or not. I know there's different terms for it depending on how strongly you feel. But a lot of women have been hurt by men on a systemic basis. And because of that, they're doing everything they can to stop that, as they should. So much of what women say about men is spot on. The problem is, though, I think that they will never, I'm not saying women collectively, the people who do that, they will never give credence to the legitimate struggles. That, I think, is the one big thing that society collectively needs to understand. Yes, so much of what men are going through is self-imposed. So much of what is happening right now is an overcorrection of all the misogynistic stuff. But at the same time, there are some people out there who just want to see men suffer. And I don't know if we'll ever truly get to where we want with that in mind as well. Because I know so many women who don't have that mindset, but then there are the ones that do. Just like I know so many men who don't have that mindset, but then they're the men who are saying, all these women are the same on social media. you're lumping everyone into a box on both sides. And we're living in a world of absolutes. And on social media, that, like I said, that's inevitable. So realize that social media it's a freaking facade.
Right.
It is for everything. For everything. I mean, we all, even if we try to make ourselves look good in social media, even if we don't know we're doing it, right? So because of that, stop thinking because you see a conversation on Twitter or Threads or anywhere else about how men all suck or women all suck, that every single person collectively thinks that. But if you are that person in that tunnel vision, who like, or in that neck deep into it, who has that tunnel vision, you're not helping either. Because I think that saying, oh, men are killing themselves left and right, let them. Now they know how it feels to be a woman and suffer, right? Oh, it's that men don't know how to talk or to people or build their own support systems. Good. Suffer in silence. Now you know how it may feel to not have any help. I don't know. I understand where it's coming from, and there's a sense of validity to it, but I don't know if that is the proper approach to take if we want to get over this hump.
What, as a man, if you're in a relationship with a man, since this is mental men conversation that we're having, what would you recommend as a partner, as a female, that you could be a good support system for your partner if you see them struggling or they open up to you about mental health issues?
Be very specific into what they do away from you based off of what you know it.
That's good advice.
Try to immerse yourself in their world from a distance, but still with the respect and the appreciation that you're trying to understand, but not just trying to understand, to a degree already do, because you are dating this person or you are married to this person. In my past relationships, the biggest thing that always got me hung up on things is when the conversation just got so generic. It's like I'm talking to a stranger in the elevator. You're hitting all the beats, but I feel like I'm not talking to someone I'm dating, right? And that's why I say in some aspects it's better because there's some conversations that may be better from someone who's maybe a little bit further away from me. But in this case, as you bring up, this is going to be a very close personal conversation because it's your spouse. So I think it's very important, whatever it be, whether it be the man towards the woman towards the man, whatever it may be. I think that just knowing how they go about their day in their professional lives, certain things they like in their personal lives, certain things they like just in terms of subjective taste. I think knowing, precisely proving that you know your spouse is the biggest thing, because there's nothing worse. And I can say this from experience, and I'm sure you can too. There's nothing worse than when you're trying to open up to someone and when you're trying to fill them in over why, but you realize about 5 minutes in, I'm telling them how I am as a person. And if they don't know how I am as a person at this point, that to me is a little bit glaring.
One thing that I have found just in general, and I think this might be why men or just people in general feel comfortable opening up to me, is I'm a very curious person.
Yes, you've asked questions.
I ask questions because I want to know who I'm speaking to. So I want to know your mind. The surface level stuff, the looks, all that stuff goes away. And I think because of social media, I think so many times people just scroll and scroll because it's like a menu.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you've ever heard me describe this, but the different apps that exist. So if you want to read a book, it's more Facebook, because people write more things on there.
Pieces.
Right. That's where you write your long paragraphs or your letters. Instagram, it's a little bit of everything, but if you want instant gratification, it's TikTok.
Yes.
Because
that's why our guy Aaron's a big TikTok guy.
I know. And because like on TikTok, it's sometimes if I'm bored, I can go on TikTok and I know somebody's live on Fremont Street. And I will go through different creators, see who's live and which place is happening. Then I could sit there and be like, maybe I'm going to join them in the fun.
Yeah.
And it's wild to think of how society has changed in that way.
Yeah.
And people do just scroll because they're just looking at the surface level and not coming from curiosity and understanding. So that's my thought process on it, on how social media has changed. How, as a man, what do you think men need to change in how they approach women in discussing or being more vulnerable with their emotions?
put down the facade that you try to carry over from social media into reality.
Into reality. Okay.
Absolutely. Show them who you really are, so when they want to establish a connection with you and reach out, they have an anchor, right? They know there's like a foundational tent pole that they could reference, that you could reference. Nothing to me shows more care than specificity.
Agreed.
Right? When you are very like, you know, it could be something as simple as knowing a guy's favorite player, so you get him that jersey as a gift. You know his favorite meal, so if he's feeling down, he cooks it, you cook it for him. He cooks it for you when you're feeling down. There are certain things, even if it's incredibly obvious that it's almost forced or contrived, the fact you made the effort for the sake of appearances means the world. Because there's nothing worse than when someone knows you're struggling, when someone knows what you're all about, but doesn't act like you are. And says, all right, this is how he is. He'll snap out of it. But how do you know? Right? There are people who have gotten the phone call or gotten the news from the cops that that person is now gone because of suicide. And you wish automatically that you could have done something differently, right? And it's one of those things where I just think that the biggest thing men need to do, be your damn self. If she doesn't like you for being your damn self, that is a good thing. You are now not going to waste time, right? Go find someone else who likes you for who you truly are. Now, that doesn't mean no person ever has to make tweaks or changes, but I also am big on the notion that zebras don't change their stripes. You can change your behavior and your patterns, no doubt about it. You are who you are. And sometimes there are people who are together for years, decades even, who are not compatible. It may have been able to work because one breadwinner was doing fine and the other wasn't great, great in the home, raising the kids or whatever. That still doesn't mean they're compatible. Right. And at this point, they're in too deep, so they're not going to back out. And if they don't hate each other enough, they're not going to proceed with a divorce or even a separation. They'll make it work, even though they know, yeah, this probably isn't the person for me. But I'm not going to, go another route now because this is what I've committed to. This is my family, and I must do it, which is noble to a degree. But think about how many men are sitting there with a cigarette or with a joint or with a scotch or a beer at night thinking, man, And then think about how many women are doing the same with a glass of wine, right? Like think about how many women are thinking like, don't get me wrong, I'm not miserable. I don't want like to just disappear. But at the same time, this is not somebody who I feel knows me and I don't know them. And in the early stages, maybe we did, but there was some type of disconnect and now it's too late. And I think that's the biggest thing. Men need to be themselves because so often women cannot be more upfront about it. And they are upfront that's what they want. If there's one thing I will give women a pat on the back for collectively, it's that they make it clear that even as you said, it's the superficial stuff. Now don't get me wrong, physical attraction is important because that's what catches your attention. But think about it. We've all been there where we find someone unless it's real hot as hell and you're immediately turned off by their personality. It's like, bye.
Oh yeah.
Bye.
Yeah.
Right to the point where ew, it's disgusting and nauseous or something. Because hey, you may be pretty, you may be hot. You're not that hot, right? No one's that hot.
Right.
So that's one of those things. And I think that ultimately I don't even think it's so much society is caught up in aesthetic or superficial things. I think honestly, we actually kind of emphasize that too much, right? Because everyone's beautiful to someone and everyone's ugly to someone at the end of the day. I do think though strongly that we don't know each other well enough. And we're so desperate, whether it be through, codependency, loneliness, fear, whatever it may be, isolation, we feel that we have to saddle with someone we think presents the best opportunity for growth and, upward movement. But at the same time, if they seem like that on the surface, you're not digging deep enough because you will only know until you know who they are, what their true colors are. And then that I think is how, I'm not saying it's going to be an overnight fix, but I think that is how at least a lot of the bullshit gets kind of fizzled out, right? And then we could kind of take the necessary approaches. You can't run before you walk. You can't walk before you crawl. The first steps, though, would be to take that. Get to know each other a little better and actually, show who you are. Because if it's not up that person's alley, they'll let you know quick. And if it is, now there's nothing left on the table.
All right, you move on to the next.
Bingo.
Yeah. Well, with that said, Aaron, do we have any guesses on the unsolicited pick? Nothing. Oh.
Well, what the beauty is, though, is that even so, if they're watching after the fact on the podcast, because that's the cool thing about Go Live. All our episodes that we stream live on are archived there as well. So do catching you, and you know you. Even if
Download
you're
the app.
right, and if you're a few days behind,
Yeah.
you may not be able to contribute to the poll, but we're still going to unveil the answer. So you're still going to have the fun of that. So
So do you want me to show the picture?
absolutely.
Okay.
Let's do it.
So TikTok, I'm going to end this live.
Bye, TikTok. Thank you, TikTok.
And let's see, so people can see.
I was probably.
I-
Should we send it to Aaron so he can pop it on the feed? Or
Aaron, do you want us to send it to you? Sure. Okay. Do you want to send it to him?
let me try. Hold on.
Okay.
Well, not even try. It's actually pretty simple. You know, it's a click of a button. But hold on, let me pull it up at least.
Send it to the email.
Okay, gotcha. This is where someone has to keep talking.
Yeah, no,
And I mean,
go-
let me ask you though, really quick, but before we do get to that, what is the biggest thing from your position as a woman, as a mother, as someone who has a lot of men open up to her? What is the biggest thing that you believe men are struggling with? Because that is how a true conversation takes place. I think a man should be able to say what is wrong with women in society while also owning up to the faults of men, and vice versa. That's where I think we get in this trap, where universally we think one side is good and one side is bad, and there's no future with that, right?
I think from a woman's perspective, both men and women sometimes can't just shut the hell up and just listen.
All right.
And I think that because I'm a good listener and I'm a curious person and I want to come from an understanding place, do I always get it right? No. I screw up too.
Yeah.
But I can own it. And I think that is one of the issues, is people not owning their mistakes and trying to change the narrative.
Right.
You know, versus just attacking the actual.
It should be in a minute. And I was
The actual
listening.
issue.
I was fully listening to what you're saying, but I
Okay.
figured we also get
Okay,
Aaron the
yeah.
picture in a timely fashion.
So-
but I think you're right. Like,
I think just listening,
Stop
and I'm a
talking.
good. Yeah, just
Right.
stop talking. And for me, I can shut the fuck up.
do you think, and this is what in my relationship with women, a big thing that men need to do, I think it kind of goes above. I think too often men explain things to women that they're passionate about, and it comes from a point of trying to provide clarity, and it's just chalked up to mansplaining. And I think vice versa, so often, you know, women will do it with men, and men kind of just say, well, you know, typical women response. Right, like it's one of those.
Right,
It's one of those
yeah.
things where you're being emotional. That's, I guess, what
Correct.
that's what you're being irrational. You're thinking with your emotion, not your logic. Oh, a woman could never be president because she doesn't think with her head. The stereotypes come
Right,
out,
right.
and that's what's so interesting, because it kind of goes back in the conversation of men need to do a better job of when you are listening to someone. You make sure, are you listening that in terms of providing feedback? Sometimes if someone's coming to you for advice, that's the very intention, right? But sometimes they're just trying to vent. They're just trying to get it all out there, and then you could go to the analysis and, you know, your actual corrections after the fact. But sometimes you just gotta let that person get it out there, right?
Yeah, because I know I'm the type of person that I talk to so many people daily. So at the end of the day, I just want to. There's certain conversations that might stand out that really touched me. So sometimes I'm just like, whoa, 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 at the end of the night, just telling you about my day in like 10 minutes.
Yeah.
And then it's like, then I'm quiet.
Right.
Then it's like, okay, you talk. You know, and that's that. But your picture, honestly, as a woman, it was so refreshing.
Because, well, no, Aaron,
Have you seen it, Aaron?
It's going. No, it's loading.
Okay,
You'll get it in a second.
So when the picture goes up, it was so refreshing because so many times men send unsolicited pictures of other things. And it's like, where'd this come from? And I know when somebody asks me for
Yep.
a picture, I will go on the internet and I will find
Yep.
a grotesque picture
To
that
say
I
the
will
least.
to send it to them, because it's like, I don't know, I don't know if it's just the culture or what,
Right.
but that's just not my thing. And if it's something that I wanted, I'm gonna tell you, hey, can you send me this? You know. So actually seeing your picture, I was laughing all day long
I
yesterday.
love it. Aaron, I'm going to get it
Because
to
you made my day.
That's
Yeah, because I didn't expect that picture. I never received such a picture. It was my first. My first.
At
My
this point,
first
at this point, everyone's like, damn it,
and
just show
there
it
isn't
to
very
us.
many firsts.
Everyone, just show it to us. That's hilarious. All
Yeah,
right.
so it was fun. Or I can bring it up.
Aaron, check it out now.
Okay.
I think I may have actually
So
sent it from my own my old
You're
email.
gonna see the unsolicited picture that he sent me and why it had me cracking up.
And the funny
because-
thing is, it's probably the most, well, I guess it depends on who you ask. It's a very tame body part compared to what usually the unsolicited pics are
Correct.
for, but at the same time, it's not a selfie. Exactly,
Aaron.
And I'll give you some context. Basically, when Nancy reached out to me to do the show, I immediately confirmed. We started making small talk, and
Yeah.
eventually went into like, what are you doing? And she's like, I'm just wrapping up work, heading home now. What are you up to? I said, just got done. I think it may have even been, I don't know if I was coming home from a friend's house watching a game or talking about a game even here wrapping up a show, but I went to the salon afterwards. I remember one of the games was actually still on, so I was watching it when you texted me, and the next thing you know,
Because you told me you were getting a
pedicure.
and I thought it was cool.
And you thought it was awesome.
Yeah.
And then I said, all right, when I got home about an hour later, I said, let me show you the results. And Aaron, with perfect timing now, there you go.
Look at those feet,
I
ladies.
never, for the record,
Ladies and gentlemen.
would have ever done that on my show or anybody else's show without, proper context or even setting it up first. But this is at the host's discretion. This was Nancy's urging. I have no qualms about it. I'm happy to just show it, or at least have Aaron
how nice his
show
feet is.
it off. And if there are people absolutely traumatized by this,
Hey.
sorry about that. Hopefully you tuned out about 2 minutes ago. So
And I told you had nice feet.
my God.
there you go.
Look at his feet.
And honestly, when I sent it, I'm all like, oh, that was a mistake, because if she's one of the people who doesn't like feet, she's going to be absolutely traumatized. She comes back, she's all like, those are nice. And then
Yeah.
she said, you said two follow-up compliments where you're all like, I'm impressed. And we may have to show those on the show.
Yes.
So here we are. It's coming full circle. I'm happy we did, because
Coming to you live.
even though we didn't get any feedback on the poll, now people going back to watch the
Yes.
podcast are going to be into it for a surprise, because we're not going to promote this either. We're going to let it be genuine, let it be candid, and in the last 2 minutes, you're going to see the dogs in your
So
face.
thank you, Brett, for being on Nancy's
you so
Riot.
much.
So I'm glad we finally met.
I'm glad we finally met. I'm
Yes.
glad we were able to get that
I
picture
know.
out there. More importantly, I'm glad we were able to have these conversations, and I hope in the future, whether it be on air or off, we can continue to have them,
Yes.
because that's the only way we improve.
Yes, and for everybody watching, thank you so much for your time. Have a wonderful rest of your week. Thank you. Thank you, Brett.
Thank you, Nancy.